The room went silent the moment Donald Trump leaned into the microphone. His words cut like a blade. I have a plan to end Ibrahim Traoré's presidency for good. Gasps filled the hall. Some laughed nervously, others froze. It wasn't just another insult. It sounded like a threat. Across the ocean, news cameras caught Ibrahim's reaction live. His eyes stayed calm, his shoulders firm, but his silence felt heavier than any speech. Supporters in Burkina Faso whispered in fear. What if Trump was serious? What if the plan worked? But then a small smile tugged at Ibrahim's lips. It wasn't arrogance. It was the confidence of a man who had been underestimated before. He raised his head, looked straight at the cameras, and said softly, "Plans built on lies collapse on their own." That moment shook the crowd. His calm voice clashed against Trump's fire. Yet behind the strength, a single drop of sweat slid down Ibrahim's temple, like a soldier preparing for the hardest fight of his life. But what no one knew was that Ibrahim had been holding back a move that could shake not just Trump, but the world itself. Trump's plan spread like wildfire. American news anchors repeated his words, their voices laced with excitement and fear. A masterstroke, one commentator called it. The end of Ibrahim's short-lived rule, another predicted. In Ouagadougou, the streets buzzed. Mothers clutched their children. Men gathered at cafes, radios blasting every new update. You could almost smell the dust in the air, heavy with tension. Some wondered if war was near. Inside the presidential palace, Ibrahim's advisors urged him to respond. "We must counter his narrative, Excellency. If we stay quiet, he wins." But Ibrahim stayed still, staring at the map on his desk. His silence frightened them more than Trump's words. Then suddenly, Ibrahim rose, his voice steady. "If a storm comes, we don't run. We stand." His aides fell silent. He wasn't shaken. He was ready. That night, Ibrahim made a decision. Instead of fighting Trump's words with more words, he would strike with something undeniable, something that would hit harder than any speech. But what he prepared was not just for Trump. It was for the entire world watching. The next day, Trump doubled down. At a rally, under blinding stage lights, he shouted, "We'll expose Traoré as a fraud. His presidency will crumble." His supporters cheered wildly, fists pumping in the air. But halfway across the world, Ibrahim appeared on live television, seated behind a simple wooden desk. No flashy stage, no roaring crowd, just him. The air felt heavy. You could almost hear the faint hum of the microphone before he spoke. "Trump believes he can end my presidency," Ibrahim began, his voice low but cutting through millions of screens. "But what he doesn't know is that truth is a shield no one can break." He reached into a folder and pulled out a document. Cameras zoomed in. What was inside? For a brief second, the world leaned closer, hearts pounding. Ibrahim's hands didn't shake, yet his eyes burned with fire. "Tonight," he said slowly, "I will reveal what they never wanted you to see." The screen flickered. The broadcast cut to black for a heartbeat, leaving viewers gasping. Then it returned. Only now, the image showed something no one expected. The screen sharpened, and suddenly documents filled the world's view. Ibrahim's voice echoed. "These are records of secret meetings, deals made in silence." His finger tapped the papers, the sound crisp against the microphone. The world held its breath. These weren't just files. They carried names, dates, signatures. Trump's allies, powerful businessmen, and even officials who claimed loyalty to freedom, but sold weapons into Africa's conflicts. Gasps erupted across homes and newsrooms. A woman watching from her living room in New York whispered, "Oh my God," while a journalist in Paris nearly dropped his pen. The evidence was clear, brutal, undeniable. Ibrahim leaned closer, His tone sharpened. This is the true plan, to keep Africa weak, to silence leaders who dare to rise. His eyes glimmered with both pain and courage. For the first time, Trump looked uneasy. Cameras caught his jaw tightening, his lips pressing hard. He laughed it off before his crowd, but inside his heart pounded. He hadn't expected this, not this soon. And Ibrahim wasn't done. He had only shown the surface. The real bombshell was still hidden. Inside Washington, panic spread. Advisors rushed into private rooms, whispering, calculating damage. The evidence Ibrahim revealed was too precise to dismiss as fake news. It felt like a knife sliding through the political armor Trump had built. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, people flooded the streets. Not in fear this time, but in roaring chants. Children waved small flags, their voices rising with hope. It was the sound of a nation refusing to bow. But behind that celebration, Ibrahim carried a weight heavier than the papers he revealed. Alone in his office, he stared at a photograph of young soldiers, his friends who had died defending their country. His hand trembled slightly as he touched the frame. "This fight is for you," he whispered. Then a knock at the door. His aide entered, urgency in her eyes. "Excellency, we've received threats. They want you silenced before the next broadcast." Ibrahim's jaw tightened. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for his people. For the first time, he felt the cold shadow of what might come, and yet, in that moment of fear, a new resolve burned brighter. The following night, Trump prepared to counter. His team drafted speeches, lined up loyal media outlets, ready to bury Ibrahim under waves of doubt. "We'll call it lies, propaganda," one strategist insisted. But when Trump walked on stage, something unexpected happened. A small group in the crowd held signs with Ibrahim's name. Their voices were faint but clear. "Truth can't be killed." Trump's smile faltered. For the first time in years, his words didn't land as heavily. Reporters caught the flicker of frustration in his eyes. Meanwhile, Ibrahim returned to the screen. This time he didn't sit. He stood tall, his hands resting firmly on the desk. The air around him carried a strange calm, almost sacred. He lifted another folder, thicker than the first. "You thought last night was everything. It wasn't. Tonight, I show you the heart of the plan itself." His voice dropped low, almost a whisper. "This is bigger than me, bigger than Trump. This is the truth about how the world is run." The screen darkened again. A single heartbeat of silence. Then, an image appeared that froze the entire globe. The image sharpened. It wasn't a document this time. It was a photo. A lavish private dinner, taken in a golden-lit hall. Around the table sat men in suits, faces the world recognized instantly. Senators, CEOs, generals. And at the center of it all, Donald Trump smiling, glass raised. The caption beneath the photo burned like fire. "Geneva, 2022. Ibrahim's voice cut through the silence. This meeting was not about peace. It was about dividing Africa. The plan was simple. Keep us broken, so they remain in control. People watching from Lagos to London felt their stomachs twist. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was betrayal. Trump's team scrambled, yelling fake into microphones. But the details were too precise. The chandeliers, the wine, the signatures on the receipts Ibrahim displayed next. It all lined up. A boy in Burkina Faso, sitting with his grandmother, whispered, "He's not just fighting for us. He's fighting for everyone." And as Ibrahim's broadcast continued, the world's faith began to tilt. A single leader from a small nation was exposing giants. But what Ibrahim revealed next was even more dangerous, because it showed how far they were willing to go to stop him. The broadcast shifted. Ibrahim held up a sealed envelope, stamped with a red mark. His voice grew heavier. This document proves they planned to remove me, not through politics, but through force. The envelope tore open, paper crackling under his fingers. Out slid a contract, payment schedules, weapons orders, coded names, signed by corporations linked to Trump's allies. The shock was unbearable. Reporters in Washington dropped their pens. A veteran in Ouagadougou clenched his fists, whispering prayers. The world wasn't just watching a political drama. It was staring at proof of a silent war. And yet, in the middle of this storm, Ibrahim's voice softened. I don't fear for myself. I fear for the mother who carries water at dawn, for the child who dreams of school. They want to crush hope itself. For a brief second, the world saw not just a president, but a man carrying the weight of millions. His courage was his armor, but the danger pressing against him was now unmistakable. And in the shadows, a darker force was already moving. That night, gunshots cracked in the distance near the presidential palace. The sound carried through Ouagadougou's streets, sharp and terrifying. Families ducked low, clutching children close. Ibrahim's guards rushed him to a secure room. The air reeked of sweat and gunpowder. His aide whispered, "They've started. The attempt to silence you." For a moment, Ibrahim stood completely still. He closed his eyes, hearing the echo of the shots outside. Fear clawed at the walls of his heart, but beneath it, something steadier rose. He opened his eyes, sharper than steel. "No," he said firmly. "They don't silence truth with bullets." He insisted on returning to the cameras. Against every plea, he stood once again before the nation, live. His shirt slightly unbuttoned, his face tense, but his voice unshaken. "They are trying to break us tonight," Ibrahim declared, each word like a hammer. "But listen closely, the truth they fear will not die with me." His voice cracked slightly on that last word. Millions watching felt their throats tighten, tears swelling. And then, suddenly, the broadcast cut to static. The screen stayed frozen in static. Seconds dragged like hours. People across Africa shouted at their televisions, radios, and phones. What happened? Where is Ibrahim? Mothers wept. Fathers clenched their fists. In New York, a news anchor's voice trembled. "We seem to have lost the feed from Ouagadougou." Her eyes flickered with dread. Meanwhile, inside the palace, chaos erupted. Soldiers scrambled down hallways, boots thundering against marble. The smell of smoke seeped in through broken windows. Ibrahim stood in the middle of it all, refusing to hide. "If they want me, I'll face them," he said calmly. His aide's hands shook as she begged, "Excellency, please, they'll kill you." But Ibrahim's mind was somewhere else, on the faces of children waving flags earlier that day, their hope resting on his courage. That memory steadied him more than the rifles at his side. Then, through the crackling radios, a chilling voice broke in. It wasn't Ibrahim. It wasn't his staff. It was someone else. Someone claiming victory. The voice on the radio was cold, almost mocking. "Ibrahim Traoré will never speak again. The plan has succeeded." Gasps tore through living rooms around the world. In Burkina Faso, silence spread across the streets. Some fell to their knees. Others screamed in defiance. But inside the palace, Ibrahim was very much alive. He listened to the broadcast with narrowed eyes. "They want fear to speak louder than truth," he muttered. He refused to let that lie stand. He walked toward the cameras again, brushing past frantic guards. His shirt was stained with dust, his face marked with exhaustion, but his steps carried fire. The lights blinked on. The static cleared, and suddenly, there he was, alive, unbroken. The crowd outside erupted. Mothers lifted their children high, shouting, "He lives! He lives!" But Ibrahim didn't smile. His expression was sharper, more determined. You see their lies, you see their fear. But tonight, I will give you more than proof. I will give you the weapon they cannot stop. The air thickened with suspense. What weapon was he talking about? Ibrahim leaned forward, eyes locked with the camera lens, as if staring directly into every viewer's soul. His voice was quiet, but carried thunder. The weapon is not guns, it is not bombs, it is truth. From a folder, he pulled out a USB drive. The small object gleamed under the light, almost insignificant, yet the weight of it felt colossal. These files contain recordings, conversations, voices you will recognize, promises they made to destroy not just me, but our future. The audience across the world froze. Trump's allies leaned forward in panic, beads of sweat forming on brows. What could be inside? Ibrahim raised the drive high. If anything happens to me, these files will go public. Every word will be heard. The crowd outside roared with defiant energy. But inside the palace walls, soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. The danger wasn't gone. It was about to explode. And then, a sudden crash echoed through the hall. Glass shattered. Ibrahim's guards drew their weapons. Someone had breached the building. The camera trembled. The screen flickered. And then, it went black again. The blackout sent shockwaves. Phones buzzed non-stop. Newsrooms exploded with speculation. Has Ibrahim been taken? Is he alive? Panic spread faster than fire. Inside the palace, gunfire rattled the corridors. The sharp metallic crack of bullets echoed off stone walls. Smoke filled the air, stinging eyes and throats. Guards shouted orders, boots pounding the marble floors. In the chaos, Ibrahim stood firm. He wasn't hiding. He was moving toward the noise. His aide clutched his sleeve, terrified. "Excellency, please, they're inside." But Ibrahim shook her hand free. "If I run now, the people will think the truth has fallen. I must face them." The double doors burst open. Armed men stormed in, faces masked, rifles raised. For a heartbeat, time froze. The intruders expected fear. Instead, they found Ibrahim staring back with eyes that didn't flinch. "Do you think killing me will kill the truth?" he said, his voice steady, almost defiant. The men hesitated. One's finger twitched on the trigger, but something in Ibrahim's tone cut through the smoke like steel. For a moment, the gunman faltered. The leader barked an order, but his voice cracked with doubt. Ibrahim's calmness unsettled them more than any weapon could. Then the sound of chanting rose outside. Thousands of voices carried through the night air. "Ibrahim, Ibrahim." The palace walls trembled with the rhythm of the people. The gunmen exchanged nervous glances. They weren't facing one man anymore. They were facing an entire nation. Ibrahim stepped closer. So close the barrel of a rifle nearly touched his chest. "If you pull that trigger," he whispered, "you won't stop me. You'll create something even greater than me." The words landed like thunder. For a split second, the leader's mask shifted, revealing uncertainty in his eyes. Then, unexpectedly, one of the gunmen lowered his weapon. His voice shook. I can't do this." He turned and walked out, leaving his rifle clattering to the floor. The others froze, torn between orders and conscience. And just as the tension reached breaking point, another explosion shook the building, this time from the outside. Glass shattered again as smoke poured into the hall. This wasn't an attack. It was the people. Civilians had broken through the barricades, flooding toward the palace to shield Ibrahim. Their voices thundered, their bodies forming a human wall. The intruders panicked. Surrounded on all sides, their plan crumbled in minutes. Some dropped their weapons. Others tried to flee. Ibrahim stood in the middle of the chaos, coughing from the smoke, but refusing to move. His eyes scanned the crowd. Ordinary men, women, even children, standing where soldiers had failed. Tears stung his eyes, though he held them back. "This," he said softly, almost to himself, "is the weapon they fear most. A people who will never kneel." Cameras hidden in the palace caught the moment and streamed it to the world. Viewers wept. Commentators couldn't find words. Even Trump, watching from afar, clenched his fists in silence. But as the dust settled, Ibrahim knew this wasn't victory. The files were still in his hand. The secrets inside could still shake the world, and the enemies he exposed would not stop here. Dawn broke over Ouagadougou, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The streets were still filled with people who had stayed all night, guarding the palace. Some carried candles, others held homemade signs. Their voices were hoarse, but their spirits unbroken. Inside, Ibrahim finally sat, exhaustion etched into his face. His hands trembled slightly as he placed the USB drive on the desk. The files inside could destroy powerful empires, but also put every life around him at risk. An aide entered, eyes swollen from tears. "Excellency, if you release it, they will come harder. If you don't, they win." Ibrahim closed his eyes for a moment. The sound of chanting outside seeped through the walls. "We trust you, Ibrahim," the people roared. He opened his eyes, steady once again. "Then I have no choice. The truth must belong to the people." His voice cracked, not from fear, but from the heavy weight of sacrifice. He knew what was coming. That evening, Ibrahim stood before the cameras one last time. No armor, no guards, just him, the drive in his hand. "My enemies tried to silence me with bullets," he began, his voice rough but strong. "They failed. Tonight I give you what they fear most." He lifted the USB drive and placed it gently on the desk. "The files are already copied, secured in different places. If I fall, they will still spread. The truth is unstoppable." The world watched, tears streaming down faces. In Paris, a teacher hugged her students tighter. In Lagos, men at a bar wept openly. In New York, even hardened journalists looked away from cameras, eyes glistening. Suddenly, a sharp bang rang in the distance. The sound of engines roared closer. Ibrahim's gaze shifted slightly. He knew they were coming for him. But instead of panic, a small smile touched his lips. He leaned forward, eyes burning into the lens. "If I do not speak tomorrow, remember this: hope never dies." The feed began to flicker. The screen cut to black for a moment. Then, without warning, it returned, showing thousands outside the palace, holding hands, standing as one. Their chants shook the earth. "Ibrahim, Ibrahim." But Ibrahim himself did not return to the camera. His chair sat empty, the USB drive still visible on the desk. The silence was deafening. Viewers around the globe sat frozen, unable to breathe. Was he taken? Was he safe? No one knew. But the image of that empty chair carried more power than any speech ever could. It was a symbol. And in that haunting silence, something miraculous happened. Across Africa, and even in parts of Europe and America, people poured into the streets. Not just in support of Ibrahim, but in defiance of the system he had exposed. Mothers wept openly. Fathers raised their fists. Children carried hand-drawn signs saying, "We will not kneel." The world had changed. Trump's plan had backfired in the most devastating way, because even if Ibrahim was gone, his truth had already taken root in millions of hearts. If this story moved you, don't just watch, stand with the truth. Like this video, share it, and comment your thoughts. And if you want more stories that shake the world, hit subscribe and join this family.